Maybe one of the most common problems music producers face is they find a great drum loop, but there's something off about the rhythm of the loop. The drums sound great, but there's like a weird fill at the end, or the kick drum's in the wrong spot. What do you do with that? This video is going to show you the MIDI tools that give you workarounds for that kind of issue. You can really add a lot of sound design when you do chop drums using these tools. Okay, so here's our drum loop. Now, instead of doing this really tedious task of chopping the audio to make a different kind of pattern, I can just go ahead and right click and go to convert drums to new MIDI track. Now, this actually does two very important things. It tries to read the original rhythm, which saves you a lot of time if you have to just alter it, but it also keeps the velocities. So as I go over here, it's actually interpreting the velocities of the samples as well, which really comes in handy for adding realism when you recreate drum rhythms with MIDI. But the problem with this function is that it's recreating that drum sound using these replacement 606 samples. Not a bad drum machine sound, but not the original sounds, right? So we have to do a second function. I'm going to highlight that loop again, right click, and I'm going to go to slice to new MIDI track. I did a previous video on the channel about how important this function is for a variety of different reasons. Now you'll notice in this pop-up window you have two drop-down menus, and you can actually slice based on the sync, which is sometimes useful for a simple beat like this. A lot of times I stick to transient and then slicing preset, and here I'm going to go for drums MPE. It's a more simplified preset way that they set this up, and it comes in handy for different reasons I'll show you later on. And then we just hit OK. And it's going to slice it into, in this case, 38 samples, and boom. Just like that, you have the entire thing in a drum rack. If I open up that MIDI, you can actually see it gives you this long sequence of lines of the same velocity. So if I just play this, it's going to cycle through the slices. And it'll sound like the original loop exactly, pretty much. Now, what's cool about this process is I can take that original MIDI that the algorithm presented and drop it in here. Now, this is a little bit of an inexact process because, the sample that we slice might not be in the right MIDI note, but you can check that using this little tiny headphone button where I can click on different areas and check out where the sample is. So for instance, if I know this group of notes needs to be my hi-hat, I can see it's actually on a snare. And just by hitting that piano key button, I can see it's there, I can move it until I hear a hi-hat sample, which is right above it. And so now I have my hi-hat placed, the snare is where it needs to be, and the kick is where it needs to be. So we can just play this now. Now, like I said, this is sometimes an inexact process. Like I go back to the drum rack region here, and you can hear it doesn't sound exactly the same as the original loop. There's a volume difference, but specifically the hi-hat sample, you can see right here, this region I might want to shorten so that it's a cleaner looking sound with that hi-hat hit. That gets rid of that sound that we were hearing before. You can also catch that same effect happening on the kick right here, where it's just tagging a little bit of the transient after it. That cleans it up. So now we should have a fairly cleaner sound for this drum sound after we've chopped it and extracted the MIDI. Okay, so now that the drums are chopped, you can actually just go in, hit fold right here, and you can easily see only the things that you're triggering. You can pretty much just switch out what's going on with the kick and the snare, because that's where a lot of the action is, specifically the kick in this case, because you can see the snares are just following on the second and fourth beat, the strong beat of the measures, whereas the kick has more variation. So basically you can go through and pick a kick pattern, a kick syncopation that really matches what you want to do with your track. Okay, so now we have our drum loop set up with a different pattern. Something we're happy with. Probably one of the biggest things about this technique we haven't covered yet is just the fact that because you've broken up that drum loop into separate stems, essentially through this Ableton drum rack, you can process those parts of the drum kit differently. So you can see right here as we play the loop, I should probably label these, but slice 3 is the snare that we're triggering, right? Right here. So I can add things to that part of the drum kit now, like a delay. And also when you add the delay there, you can see this in the live session view, which you have to unfold that drum rack with this little arrow. And in this case, we have a lot of slices we could probably delete from here, but you can still see the snare one I labeled, and there's the corresponding delay. Now with this delay, what I'm actually doing is I'm making it much shorter. I'm hitting the 1 instead of the default 3, turning the feedback way back and the dry wet way back. And I can also solo the snare so you can hear what this is doing. I can turn it up more in the dry wet so you can hear it. It's kind of simulating what drummers do when they have a lazier hand on the snare drum, creating some of those really funky ghost notes. And that can add something to the drum sound for sure. You can also add on a similar kind of effect of variation with the hi-hat sample. You can see in this beat right here, slice 8 is where our hi-hat is. I'm just going to label that while we're at it. And if we solo it, we can go into that little menu here where it says filter global, and this is going to completely change the way things look. You can actually see it's giving you a filter that's already turned on, which you can pull back using the high cut filter. Now, if I want to control it without the macros, all you have to do is select anything that has that little green dot and right click. And then all you have to do is slide up to where it says unmap. So unmap from this, unmap from that, and then that will be free. So this applies to really like anything where you see green dots in these presets because they have macros for your convenience, but you can always unmap those things with just right click, find where it says unmap. And now I can do some filtering on that hi-hat sound. That really comes in handy because a hi-hat can give you some of that variation. It's such a repetitive piece of the beat, a lot of these beats, that it really helps to give it some variation. And that's where your modulators come in. If you've never seen this part of the Ableton menu, it's a really great place to step up your game because you can use things like an LFO. An LFO doesn't create any sound, it creates movement. I actually did a full tutorial on LFOs on my Patreon. And what I can do is drag it in just like I did with that delay. Place it right after this specific sample. This doesn't matter as much for the LFO, but to keep things organized, I'll put it on this part. I'm going to hit map and then click on where we clicked on before for that frequency of the filter. So now as you can hear, it's almost like there's little dropouts happening on that sound of the hi-hat. That's because the LFO is moving this filter around. You can't see it in this case, which is a shame, but it's basically going like this. It's moving it, and that's what's creating variation in the sound. A really neat thing is to change the shape of that LFO. They're just giving you a basic sine wave, but you can hit this drop-down menu and go to random. A random will now jump around, and maybe I'll just make sure that it's not too much of that effect. So I'll just go maybe like -15, set the filter where I like it, still near the top, but maybe like right here. And you get these little dropouts happening in the sound, which is really cool for adding detail in that hi-hat that's not repetitive sounding. And you can kind of take this idea as far as you want to go. Like I might take this convolution reverb. It's got some really cool presets in it. Just put it right on the snare. So the snare has some reverb, but the kick and the hi-hat are still very dry and forward sounding. So yeah, it's kind of amazing when you think about where we first started with this original audio loop. We could alter the beat however we wanted, and we also have our own sound design now. Which is really useful for your music, and I hope this video helps you because I know a lot of people run into this issue when trying to work with drum loops. So be sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you like this video, you want to see more. It does a whole lot to support the channel. And if you want to get a lot more from these videos, I highly recommend checking out the Patreon. I've been there for years. There's huge content libraries on there, all kinds of exclusive stuff, extended versions of these YouTube videos with a bunch of goodies that you can download. There's a huge royalty-free MIDI library, a whole course on vocal production, vocal presets for Ableton, FL Studio, Logic. There's a massive community there. You can promote your music there. Really talented, supportive, kind people in that community. It's just a great place to check out when you want to get more from this stuff. Thank you guys so much for your support. I'll see you all later. Have fun making music.